This is a data analysis project based on Excel from a fictitious company, Acme Incorporation, for Q2 2021. A request was sent by email with some brief requirements. Good morning. The board is asking to see how volume look in Q2. Here's the data that I got, but didn't have a chance to pull anything together and was hoping you could take a shot at it. They just want to see Q2 2021 volume by region and wanted to know if everything was looking good. I think this file is what you need. For the region codes, I know North America ends in 1, Europe, Middle East, and Africa ends in 3, and Asian Pacific and Latin America are 2 and 4, but I don't remember which is which. I do know Latin America has the lowest volume, so just go ahead and assign to whichever comes out lowest. Thank you. So based on this request, the main task is to visualize Q2 for the years 2001, compares Q2 to other quarters to look for a trend or anomalies. We also need to find a region with the lowest volume. North America and Europe, Middle East, Africa is straightforward, but Asian Pacific and Latin America needs to be identified. We'll be able to do this by analyzing the volume for each region. Time to do some data cleaning. First, let's have a look at the workbooks. The first worksheet contains data about client ID, date, and volume. The second worksheet contains data about client ID and regional code. I've copied each of the worksheets and renamed them appropriately. The first worksheet becomes volume data and the second becomes the geo data. I kept the original as a backup and hid them away. Next, I did some basic cleanup. Unwrap text, deleting empty rows, removing duplicates, and check the spelling. I then converted the data range into tables and named the tables appropriately. In volume data, the client ID had empty cells that need to be filled in. I also make sure that the filled in values are indeed values and not references. Next, I verify all the column data for errors, unwanted values, and consistency. In the date column, for instance, when we open the sorting tools, we can see that there's a text filler option and that the sorting is not consistent. So the column need to be formatted properly in order to see the date filter, and also in the sorting you see the years and the months. Same thing for the volume column, where numbers are formatted as text. As you can see, the text filter, and they are not sorted properly. By converting the text as a number, we can now see that we have a number filter and that the numbers are sorted properly. Now that the cleanup is done, the next step is to build upon those tables by modifying or adding some fields as well as adding some tables. For instance, the client ID field is not the same in geodata as in volume data. So in the geodata table, we created a new column and extracted the last 7 characters from client ID to match the client ID from the volume data. We then replaced the client ID with the new values. In the request, 2 regions are clearly identified, and the other 2 depends on the volume of business. So a new table is needed to figure out the volume per region. The new table has GeoID, taken from the GeoData table, and GeoName, which are the regions. We also add a region column to the Geo table and add values based on the new table. In order to find the lowest volume region, we added a volume field to the new table, taken from the volume data table. The volume field looks at the GeoID and client ID fields from the GeoData table. reference it to the client ID and volume fields from the volume data table, and display the sum. From this, we can identify the lowest volume as Latin America. Next, we added fields to the volume table. First, we added a region ID and also a region name field. Then, since we needed to compare Q2s, we added a quarter field. For this, we create a quarter table to separate the date into quarters. Once we add our quarters, we then transfer this data into the volume data table. It's now time to do some calculations and some visualization. We use the volume table to create some pivot tables on which we based our visualizations. First, let's see our volume per quarters. So this pivot table gave us the total volume per year, per quarters, and per regions. From this pivot table, we did a line chart of Q2 of 2021. We also did a line chart of the total volume per quarters and per regions. From this chart, we can see that there's some kind of seasonality peaking at Q2s. Since North America is by far the main seller, let's hide it to have a better picture of the other regions. We can see that it is very similar to North America, as Q2s is the peak of the year. To see if everything is looking good, let's look at the numbers by region now. What we want to do here is to look at Q2 year to year and compare it to Q1, since it's the only quarter that we have numbers for both years. When we compare Q1 year on year with Q2 year on year, we can see that North America Q1 increases was 4% and Q2 was 3.4%. Europe and Middle East Africa is the same for both years at 1.6%. We did have a slight drop in Asian Pacific. But the big difference here is Latin America, that went from 9% to 0%. Another matrix we could look at is the forecast of Q2 based on Q1. For example, for North America, let's assume the growth of Q1 of 4% to Q2. In that case, we would have hit 600,000 instead of 596. That gave us a difference of 4,416 units in a variance of 31%. Transposing that to our other regions, again, Latin America has the biggest difference and the highest variance. So Latin America has the lowest increase of sales in Q2 year on year and the highest variance. Now let's figure out what drives these numbers. What is the cause of the differences and variances? To do that, we create a pivot table at the client level. There's a new client on Q2 2020, client number 17270. This client arrived late in Q2 2020, so it skewed Q1 and Q2 years on years, slowing perceived growth. Its Q2 year-on-year difference account for almost all of the Q2 years-on-years difference of the whole region forecast miss. There's also a new client on Q4 2020, client number 50651. So this client did not have an impact on Q1 and Q2's year-on-year. Overall, North America gained clients but lost volumes. Based on the forecast, Europe, Middle East, Africa has a variance of 0%. This means that the forecast is right on target. Looking at pivot clients Europe, Middle East, Africa section, we can see that there is no change in order activities, nor is a big swing in numbers. Like North America, Asian Pacific also gained and lost clients. There's a new client in Q3 2020, client number 44634. There's also a client lost in Q2 221, client 99496. Overall, although Asian Pacific fell short on forecast, these forthcoming are mainly attributed to the loss of 99496 in Q2 of 2021. Latin America had a new client in Q3 2020, client number 22675. This client was a significant player and was lost in Q2 2021. There was also another client lost in Q2 2021, client number 49900. This client was a mid-tier player, but these two clients took away about 7,000 in volume in Q2 2021, accounting for 56% variance in Q2 year on year.